The documentary opens by setting the scene for a tragic event introducing Leslie, a young girl who against her will is flying with her mother Magdalena and her 3 younger siblings to Bogotá to live with her stepfather. Leslie, who was happy living with her grandmother, recounts the terrifying moments when the plane began making strange noises, creaking and sputtering before the pilot issued a mayday and the aircraft suddenly fell, culminating in a loud crash, the last thing she remembers. The narrative shifts to the aftermath where Leslie's grandma Fatima receives the devastating news: Magdalena's plane has crashed in the jungle. Grief-stricken Fatima struggles with the certainty that no one could have survived. Simultaneously, Leslie's stepfather Manuel is consumed by worry for his wife, son, baby daughter and 2 stepdaughters. News reports confirm a Senza 206 aircraft was lost and search efforts began, immediately complicated by the dense swallowed-up jungle. Leslie awakens at the crash site covered in blood and in intense pain. She finds her siblings Zeleny and Kristen crying. Her mother Magdalena is fatally injured and Leslie struggles to free baby Kristen, who is trapped under her mother's body. Leslie's leg is badly hurt, her shoe stuck in the collapsed seat, but she manages to slip her foot out and pull her siblings free. She treats a gushing head wound with a first aid kit and scavenges a hammock, a mosquito net and Kristen's bottle before lying down on arranged leaves. Unable to sleep due to pain and Kristen's constant crying, Leslie prepares to face the immediate future. The Colombian Air Force, led by Pedro Sanchez of the Special Forces, initiates a ground search after 5 days of failed aerial reconnaissance. The area is established based on the plane's last coordinates, but the dense untouched jungle with trees up to 50 meters tall and filled with dangerous animals and poisonous snakes presents a monumental challenge. Sergeant Montiel compares the search to finding a needle in a haystack. The military search party, operating in a region known for FARC narco-guerrilla activity, moves cautiously to avoid detection. Meanwhile, Manuel, unable to wait, recruits indigenous friends, including Faustino and Jair from the Araraquara community, who are experts in navigating the jungle. They believe the jungle connects man to nature and the creator, but is also dangerous, filled with both visible and invisible threats. Faustino recounts being separated from his group during a severe storm, believing an angry spirit was playing with him, only for his companions to reappear after he prayed. After days with no trace of the plane, hope dwindles until Miranda spots a small pink baby bottle in the immense jungle, an unmistakable sign of life. Concurrently, the indigenous team, prepared for the worst, spots a king vulture and follows it to the wreckage. Nestor and Jair find Magdalena's body, which is a terrible shock, and immediately think of Manuel. Back in her community, Leslie's grandma Fatima, distraught and angry at Manuel, burns all of Magdalena's belongings, lamenting her daughter's death and their unresolved issues. At the crash site, the special forces arrive to confirm the wreckage and the adults' bodies, but the children are nowhere to be found. They are shocked that 4 young children, including a baby, are now alone in the jungle, essentially food for the animals. Leslie, having waited by the plane for days with no rescue, decides to take action. She packs 2 bags with supplies and, despite her injured leg, begins to walk leaning on a stick she found. Along the way, they encounter threatening tapirs and an ocelot. Leslie protects her siblings, teaching them the lesson their grandmother taught: do not disturb the dangerous animals. Tien struggles to accept that their mother is dead, crying out for her. The military decides to abandon their invisible approach and start calling out to the children. They believe the children may have left in search of help or a river. A shelter made of palm leaves, confirmed to be the size for 3 or 4 people and cut with scissors, is found, a second sign of life. Leslie's family members, including her Aunt Damaris, describe Leslie's maturity and devotion to her siblings, particularly Soliani and her mother-like role. Leslie and Soliani recall eating milpso's fruit given to them by monkeys, a soft variety Leslie ensured the baby Kristen received. However, Kristen starts crying from thirst and Soliani admits to having lost the baby bottle while they rested. Leslie is frustrated and is forced to use a bottle cap to give Kristen tiny sips of water. When the indigenous team calls out to the children and hears a response, they think they've found the children, but it's another Special Forces team, Destroyer 1. Tensions rise between the 2 groups, fueled by a history of conflict between indigenous communities and the military due to FARC's influence in the area. After a tense night of watchful separation, the 2 groups agree to go their separate ways. Leslie slowly regains her ability to walk without a limp. The military begins broadcasting a recording of Grandma Fatima's voice in both Spanish and their indigenous language, Huatoto, pleading with the children to stay in one place. Leslie hears the voice but doesn't trust it and keeps walking. The military, frustrated, ramps up their efforts, dropping flyers, food supplies and laying caution tape with whistles, even blasting pop music. This noise angers a jungle spirit, according to the indigenous searchers, making their technology useless. A new strategy is employed. Indigenous reinforcements are called in and Special Forces Sanchez is ordered to integrate them into combined search cells, using their knowledge while trusting but verifying their background. Don Rubio, a respected indigenous shaman, joins the search. At the crash site, Leslie's uncle Ezekiel is overwhelmed by pain seeing his sister's clothes and the children's makeshift shelter, blaming Manuel, who his sister's friend Yolibeth confirms was abusive, forcing the guerrillas to warn him. Manuel, however, denies serious domestic violence. Ezekiel is calmed by Don Rubio, who suggests a mambe, coca powder, and amble, tobacco paste, session to gain inspiration and determine the children's path. Don Rubio, guided by his meditation, sets the direction, refusing to work with the army, who is ordered to follow 300 meters behind. Ezekiel spots small footprints leading to a small shelter, diapers, and Kristen's yellow shirt, all fresh signs. They realize the children must be close, and though hungry, Leslie and Soliani continue to walk, having only milpsos to eat. Leslie and her siblings are suffering from hunger. Leslie is consumed by guilt, crying as she remembers wasting food and not paying attention to her deceased mother Magdalena's advice about being an orphan. Soliani believes Leslie thinks God is punishing her. Meanwhile, the military is closely following the indigenous search team led by Don Rubio, who is infuriated by the unwanted surveillance. Rubio's distrust of outsiders and armed men stems from the historical trauma of the rubber trade, during which the Huatoto people were enslaved, punished, and subjected to genocide by those who came to exploit their resources. The relationship between the indigenous team and the military, particularly with Lieutenant Montoya, Popeye, begins to thaw when Rubio is forced to accept aid for a machete cut. The two groups share food and stories, culminating in Rubio inviting Montoya to a nightly mambe, coca powder, session. During this ritual, Rubio explains his belief that the children aren't lost but are being held captive by the duende, a shape-shifting spirit. He claims the duende appeared to the children as their grandmother Fatima to lead them away. To appease the spirit, the military command, against its usual protocol, agrees to supply 4 bottles of liquor which the duende is said to enjoy. Sergeant Montiel is ordered to place the bottles in the shape of a cross at a river fork at midnight. As Montiel and his team attempt the mission, they experience inexplicable occurrences, including rapidly spinning compasses and tangled shoelaces, leading them to believe a supernatural force is actively blocking them. The military eventually accepts the indigenous team's methods, with Montoya taking mambe himself, noting it prevents hunger and fatigue. With this cooperation, they find more clues: diapers, the boys' shoes, and a pattern of circular movements in their tracks. With every passing day, hope wanes. The search is compared to looking for tiny fleas in an immense carpet. The searchers realize the children, who are not afraid of the jungle, may be avoiding the military out of fear, potentially hiding from their stepfather Manuel. Leslie's cousin Yiritsa confirms the awful relationship between Leslie and Manuel. He was controlling, forbidding her social life, and pulling her out of school to serve as a slave for housework and child care, threatening to hit her if she disobeyed. Grandma Fatima had tried to take Leslie in, but Manuel refused, stating, "Who will take care of the baby?" Lost and desperate, Leslie encounters a tortoise near a river which Tien tries to attack. Tien continues to be angry and refuses to believe they are lost, while Leslie struggles with overwhelming fatigue and the heavy burden of caring for her slow-moving siblings. She briefly considers abandoning them, but taking a deep breath, decides to stay. The indigenous team, exhausted and sick, are also losing hope, with Ezekiel confronting Manuel for his whining and past mistreatment of his sister. The tragic truth of Magdalena's last days is revealed. After discovering Manuel was bringing another woman to the community, Magdalena ran to a friend's house bleeding after Manuel hit her with a machete. Manuel fled to Bogotá to escape the guerrillas who would have killed him for the domestic violence. Despite the violence, Magdalena, receiving a note from Manuel, was bewitched and convinced to leave for Bogotá with the children for the promise of a better life. Leslie, who didn't want to go, was pulled by her hair onto the plane. Manuel is blamed for her death due to his lies. With the military team leaving and the indigenous team failing to find the children, they decide on a last resort: ayahuasca. Manuel takes the first dose, but shockingly he falls asleep, suggesting a lack of purity, preventing the plant from working. During this time, the duende attacks the search party in their dreams. Leslie finds one of the flyers dropped by the military, which, combined with the extreme exhaustion of Soliani and Tien and the critical condition of the baby Kristen, convinces her to stop walking. She sets up a shelter and waits. On the second night of the ritual, Don Rubio takes the yak himself. He describes a spiritual fight with the duende who was protecting the children. The spirit eventually surrenders the children, guiding him to a platanillo tree up a hill. The search party, despite being tired, follows Rubio's direction even after he disappears. An indigenous searcher threatens a Moroccoy tortoise, promising to eat its liver if it doesn't grant their wish to find the children. Moments later, Leslie hears voices and, upon raising her head, sees the searchers. The children are found alive after 40 days, 2 days shy of dying, confirming the incredible power of Leslie's survival skills. Manuel is overjoyed but struggles to accept Leslie's timeline of the accident. During the helicopter evacuation, as Manuel and Kristen are lifted, the aircraft is inexplicably pulled and buffeted by an unseen force believed to be the duende trying to impede the rescue. The other children, including Leslie, are also extracted successfully. Leslie later recounts the hardest moment: the desire to abandon her siblings but deciding to stay and save them. Her family affirms that she is a miracle, free now to have a real life. The documentary concludes by emphasizing that this search should lead to a new phase of understanding and inclusion between the Colombian state and its historically excluded indigenous communities. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.